Well, good morning, Amy.
Good morning, Alex.
How's life?
Life is well.
That's good. Is it well with your soul?
It's well with my soul.
While the Titanic is sinking.
Oh,
I have
no.
the task of completing the final section of the book of Isaiah. So we're doing chapters 52 through 66. I think you told me that you've read a children's book about Isaiah to your daughter.
Yes. Well, it's a whole book, and it's a storybook. It's the Storybook Bible. Sally Lloyd Jones. Say that 3 times fast. It's called the Jesus Storybook Bible, and the little subtitle is "Every Story Whispers His Name." And she just does a phenomenal job of. We got it for my daughter, I think, when she was 4 or 5 years old, and we would read it to her. And we've gone through it several times. She's 11 now and has been reading, regular scripture for some time now. But it's just nice because if you can explain it to a 4 or 5 year old, that's kind of the way that I like to consume things. Always think about how, you have to come to God like a child.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gives a nice little 3 or 4 page nutshell of what Isaiah is about.
And what are your memories of reading that stuff to Vivian? Like, what struck you about it?
Often it talks about like the names of people, do you know what your name means? Well, Isaiah means, and she says, God to the rescue, and how God let Isaiah in on the secret, and how God was going to mend the broken world with his secret rescue plan, Operation No More Tears.
Really?
is how she explains
That's
it.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And then she goes on to say, okay, so Isaiah wrote a letter from God to his children, which is perfect because it's explaining it exactly like a child would understand it then. And it starts out, dear little flock, you've been wandering away from me, and you've always been running away from me, and you're lost and you can't find your way back to me. So I'm going to help you. And I can't stop loving you, even though you run from me and you do things you shouldn't. I just can't stop loving you. And I'm going to send a shepherd to look after you and carry you home to me. Wow. And you've been stumbling around like people in a dark room. And out of the darkness, a bright light is going to shine.
Oh my God.
And it's going to chase away all the shadows. And it's going to be like sunshine, this bright light. A little baby's going to be born. He's going to be royal, and his mommy is going to be a young girl who doesn't have a husband. And his name's going to be Emmanuel, which means God has come to live with us. He's one of King David's children's children, and she refers to him as the Prince of Peace. And someone's going to come rescue you, but it's not going to be anyone you expect. It says he will be a king, but he won't live in a palace. And so the illustrator drew a palace and then put an X through it. Like he's royal, he's king. He's not going to have a lot of money. He's going to be poor, and he's going to be a servant, but he's going to heal the whole world. And he's going to be a hero. He's going to fight for his people, and he's going to rescue them from their enemies. But he won't have big armies, and he won't fight with swords, and he's going to make the blind see. He's going to make the lame leap like deer, and he's going to make everything the way it was always meant to be, but people will hate him, and they won't listen to him, and he'll be like a lamb. He will suffer and die. The secret rescue plan we made from the beginning of the world. That's what this plan is. It's the only way I can get you back. But this rescuer won't stay dead. he's I, God, will make him alive again. And one day when he comes back to rule forever, the earth will shout out loud and his fame will fill the whole earth as waters cover the sea. And so the rescuer is going to come. You need to look for him. You need to look for the rescuer and you need to wait for him because he will come. I promise, says God. So this is just a letter, and she writes it like God is writing a letter. And she even ends it with, there's like a big hand on the storybook page, and it's writing, love God. And then it ends with, poor Isaiah, he read God's letter over and over to God's people, but no one listened to him at all, ever. And they didn't want to hear God's promise. They didn't believe it. Maybe it sounded too good to be true. A story that ends happily ever after. Well, it does sound like a fairy tale, doesn't it? And as anyone will quickly tell you, fairy tales aren't true, or are they? And that's how she ends her condensed version of Isaiah. Over the years, reading the Gospels and actually, digging into Isaiah references in the New Testament, in the Gospels, that's when I first read that that Jesus wasn't going to be some great looker, not the way that he gets portrayed all the time in movies and paintings and pictures and everything else, that he was humble in stature.
Yeah.
You came